Oh, well, at least he's taken care of. Oh, look at what he's done to my outfit. Well, I think I have both a festive and efficient solution to this problem. Let's just see what's in the book. Merry Christmas to Cthulhu, fa la 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 la. Oh, well, perfect. My favorite holiday attire. Perfect for this situation and wonderful night. Now, falling in line with this time of giving, I found it very fitting that my gift to you all should be a first story of my own. I've been working on a retelling of a tale from my childhood, and I hope you all enjoy, as my gift to you all. Now, without further ado, and happy holidays wherever you are. On with tonight's story. The Woods of Somerset, Kentucky, by you/ScaryStormy. How many of you have an event from your past that you can't ever forget? Something that terrified you to the point of pure primal fear. But it's so far-fetched and impossible that you begin questioning your mind's credibility. For me, that event happened 10 years ago, in the woods of Somerset, Kentucky. I was about 15 when these events took place. I'm not gonna lie, I consumed a lot of horror media growing up. I would stay up all night watching Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, even the shitty last 3 movies. Yes, they sucked, don't at me. I absolutely adored all types of horror media, and so did my friends. One type of horror that always struck a chord with us were these investigation shows. Ghost Hunters, Destination Truth, Scariest Places on Earth, all that stuff. I remember my friend Mark's dad was real big into paranormal investigation, and that kind of fueled the flames. We all wanted to grow up and explore the world, investigating all kinds of abandoned buildings, hiding unknown creatures or entities. We would be better than all of those shows because, unlike them, when shit hit the fan, we'd stand our ground and take whatever came our way. But the worldwide adventure would have to be put on hold considering, we were all literal children. That never broke our resolve, though. Now, Mark's dad had the works. EMF detectors, night vision cameras with thermal readings, high-end audio recorders, all of it. He also had several firearms. Not like a crazy amount, but enough for personal protection and home defense. We all referred to Mark's dad as like the Batman of ghost hunting because he always seemed to have the right tool for every situation. He even had one of the magazines for his pistol loaded with silver bullets. Just in case, he told us. He would take us out along a lot of his investigations to local cemeteries and places with haunted reputation. We all felt like we were really doing it. This was just a stepping stone of our lives to become the adventure book we all thought it was going to be. Sorry for all the background for the event, but I just want you all to understand the mindset we were all in to get us to make the stupid choices that we did. Now, Mark's place was the place to be back then. We would spend days at this place, hanging out, playing games, and watching TV to our heart's desire. One of the weekends, we had the house to ourselves, and it was great. It was Mark, Chuck, Danny, Brendan, and myself. We were trying to kill as much time as we could, waiting for the night to fall. You see, one of the most beautiful things about Somerset were the woods. Somerset did have a little center town where it faked a sense of being an actual city, but once you got about 2 miles worth of city, all of a sudden you dropped off the face of the earth. Somerset is about 11 square miles large, and I guarantee you that most of it is woods. Some of it's Lake Cumberland, but most of it's woods. When we were at Mark's place, we were about 20 minutes from the next house. Like I said, dropped off the face of the world. And on that night, 10 years ago, the night finally fell over Somerset. This was finally our time. Our stupid, edgy 15-year-old time. You see, we had been waiting for night to come because we were going to explore the woods out behind Mark's house. We were all armed with our flashlights, water bottles, and all of us had knives to some capacity. Mark also had brought some of his guns, just in case. He had a 12-gauge pump shotgun. It maybe had like 6 shells in the gun at best. Chuck had a .22 rifle that had a very wimpy single-round capacity. And I had a .22 6-shot revolver. In Somerset, being in the backwoods town that it wasn't uncommon to see someone toting around firearms all over the place. Now, it wasn't super common to have 15-year-olds carrying guns, but it would happen from time to time. Plus, we were on private property, so in our minds, it was okay. Like I said, we were stupid kids. Once we were all geared up, it was time for our adventure. And as soon as we entered those woods, there was this uneasy tension in the air. The crickets and the other wildlife in the area sounded active, which was a good sign. We weren't sure just as yet as to what it was that made us feel off, but we would soon find out. We were about 15 minutes into the woods when we found the bridge. This bridge was an old rickety wooden thing that went across a steep trench that was probably about 15 feet deep that went on for at least 50 to 70 feet before twisting around the hills out of sight. Not exactly a canyon, but it was definitely not something I wanted to go down into. If I did, it would be a pain in the ass to get back up. It didn't really seem like an easy way to get back. We decided to take a quick break while we were there. We set up a small perimeter with a lantern from our pack. We really didn't have any plan on just how long we were going to be out there, so we decided to set up a small campfire and just hang out until it's time to continue. Chuck, Danny, Mark, and Brendan were relaxing and shooting the shit with each other, so I decided to keep watch. I was walking around the perimeter we had set up, shining my flashlight around the woods surrounding us. As I was walking, I noticed something strange. I heard the crunching of leaves under my feet. And I'm sure someone would say, so what? But that's just it. That's all I heard. Other than the few words here and there from my friends, I heard nothing else. The woods were dead silent. And as soon as I noticed the silence, I drew the revolver from its holster. Whatever good the .22 was going to do to what I thought was nearby. I continued to shine my flashlight around, trying to remain calm, but then the beam shined onto something just at the edge of the hill. Something just barely peeking over the edge of the trench. Something that I couldn't quite make out with just the light. But after a few moments of adjusting, I could finally make out what it was. But I wish that I hadn't. The thing's white skin was reflecting the beam from the flashlight, but I could make out a vaguely human-shaped head. Its dark eyes seemed to absorb the light, leaving just soulless voids staring daggers at me. I was frozen in place, locked in eye contact with whatever this thing was. Then its head disappeared back into the trench. As soon as I was released from its gaze, I turned back to my friends and tried as quietly as I could to get their attention, but they didn't seem to notice. They were too enveloped in their conversation, probably about something stupid as usual. So after mustering as much as I could, I called out, "Hey! Hey! Hey!" The crack of my voice echoed through the now silent woods. They all whipped their heads back at me, startled at the sudden sound. After a moment, I finally recollected myself and slowly but frantically pointed out at the trench where I saw the thing. something in the ditch," I barely forced out. And with that, the rest of my friends quickly got up and drew the weapons they had. All of us frantically searching at the edge of the ditch with our guns trained on the spots. After a few moments, our desperate searching, we finally noticed the thing peek up again. About 10 feet closer than it had previously been. It was peeking just slightly more than it had been previously. My friends, now caught in the same trance as its voids of eyes, stared quickly, moving from one of us to the other. For a moment, it almost looked like it didn't have a mouth, and then we all saw its tongue come out of a small slit in its face, almost seeming to lick its lips at us. We all stood in the same frozen shock as the thing quickly dipped back down into the trench. And it came back up again, another 10 feet closer. It was coming closer to us. I can't remember who yelled to run, but I remember all of us running like maniacs back towards Mark's house. So much for standing our ground. I found myself close to the front behind Chuck, and we ran for what felt like forever. As we ran for what we believed was our lives, I heard Danny and Brendan screaming. I can't remember what it was that they were saying, but my ears were ringing and my lungs were burning. Eventually, we finally made it back to Mark's house. Seeing that house was the closest feeling to salvation I've ever experienced. We all practically dived into the door, quickly locking it behind us. After we were finally clear, we kept our guns trained on the doors and exits fueled only by adrenaline. It had to have been hours that we all stood with our weapons in our hands, just hoping that the creature wouldn't try to enter the house. Once morning finally came, we were all exhausted. I don't think I was the first person to pass out, but I know that I was the last person to wake up. Everyone else was just sitting quietly in the living room. It took hours before we decided to even talk about what happened. Danny and Brendan explained that as we were running, they could hear heavy steps running behind them. We couldn't rationalize what it was that we saw, so we all decided not to talk about it to anyone else. Again, stupid decision, I know, but we were terrified teenagers. We all decided that we were never going to go into the woods behind Mark's house again. And we stuck to that. We never did go back out into the woods, and I barely went out into the woods anywhere else in that town. And our investigation team plans, unfortunately, fell apart. We all moved to different places later in our lives and slowly grew apart. The only people I really keep in contact with anymore are Chuck and Mark, but I haven't seen either of them in years. There are many things that I question when I look back at that night. What could it have been? Why couldn't we move? Was it just some animal that looked monstrous in the light? But the thing that always confuses me is how it moved. It just kept bobbing up and down out of a 15-foot trench. I don't understand how it could have climbed up and down. Unless it was just ducking.